Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Mr. Coakley. We're going to read chapter 15, section 3. This section is titled Challenges to Slavery, starting on page 456. American Diary. A few years after the attacks in Kansas, John Brown led a raid in Harpers Ferry, Virginia. Many people considered Brown and his followers to be ruthless murderers. The Fredericksburg Herald declared that, quote, shooting is a mercy they should be denied, close quote. Others viewed Brown as a freedom fighter. When Brown was executed in 1859, writer Henry David Thoreau wrote, quote, he is not Old Brown any longer, but an angel of light, close quote. Quoted in John Brown at Harper's Ferry and from Thoreau's A Plea for Captain John Brown. Page 457, A New Political Party. Main ideas. Opponents of slavery from different political parties came together to form the new Republican Party. History and you. Which of today's political issues is most important to your family? Read to learn how the party stood on key issues of the 1854 and 1856 elections. Even before Brown's raid, other events drove the North and South further apart. After the Kansas-Nebraska Act, the Democratic Party began to divide along sectional lines, with Northern Democrats leaving the party. Differing views over the slavery issue destroyed the Whig Party. The election of 1854. In 1854, additional anti-slavery Whigs and Democrats joined forces with Free Soilers to form the Republican Party. The Republicans challenged the pro-slavery Whigs and Democrats, choosing candidates to run in the state and congressional elections of 1854. Their main message was that the government should ban slavery from new territories. The Republican Party quickly showed its strength in the North. In the election, the Republicans won control of the House of Representatives and of several state governments. In the South, the Republican Party had almost no support. Almost three-fourths of the Democratic candidates from free states lost in 1854. The Democrats were increasingly becoming a Southern party. The election of 1856. Democrats and Republicans met again in the presidential election of 1856. The Whig Party, disintegrating over the slavery issue, did not offer a candidate of its own. The Republicans chose John C. Fremont of California as their candidate for president. Fremont gained fame as an explorer in the West. The party platform called for free territories, and its campaign slogan became Free Soil, Free Speech, and Fremont. The Democratic Party nominated James Buchanan of Pennsylvania, an experienced diplomat and former member of Congress. Buchanan wanted to appease the South in order to save the Union. As a result, the party endorsed the idea of popular sovereignty. Page 458. The American Party, or Know-Nothings, grew quickly between 1853 and 1856 by attacking immigrants. The Know-Nothings nominated former President Millard Fillmore. Most of the Northern delegates, however, walked out of the convention when the party refused to call for the repeal of the Kansas-Nebraska Act. The presidential vote divided along rigid or firm and inflexible sectional lines. Buchanan won the election. He took all southern states except Maryland and received 174 electoral votes compared to 114 for Fremont and 8 for Fillmore. Fremont did not receive a single electoral vote south of the Mason-Dixon line, but he carried 11 of the 16 free states. Reading check. Identifying. Which political party was emerging as the party of the South in the 1854 and 1856 elections? The Dred Scott case. Main idea. The Supreme Court's decision in the Dred Scott case dealt a severe blow to anti-slavery forces and further divided the country. History and you. How would you feel if the Supreme Court decided that you were property? Read to find out how the decision in the Dred Scott case shocked the nation. Dred Scott was an enslaved African American bought by an army doctor in Missouri, a slave state. In the 1830s, the doctor moved his household to Illinois, a free state, and then to the Wisconsin Territory, where slavery was banned by the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. Later, the family returned to Missouri, where the doctor died. In 1846, with the help of anti-slavery lawyers, Scott sued for his freedom. Scott claimed he should be free because he once lived in areas of the North where slavery was prohibited. 11 years later, as anger grew over the slavery issue, the case reached the Supreme Court. The case attracted enormous attention across the country. While the immediate issue was Dred Scott's status, the court also had the opportunity to rule on the question of slavery in the territories. The court's decision. The court's decision electrified the nation. Chief Justice Roger B. Taney said that Dred Scott was still an enslaved person. As such, Scott was not a citizen and had no right to bring a lawsuit. Taney continued on, addressing broader issues. Taney wrote that Scott's residence on free soil did not make him free. An enslaved person was property, and the Fifth Amendment prohibits Congress from taking away property without due process of law. Finally, Taney wrote that Congress had no power to prohibit slavery in any territory. The Missouri Compromise, which banned slavery north of the 36 degrees 30 degree north latitude, was unconstitutional. For that matter, so was popular sovereignty. Not even the voters in a territory could prohibit slavery because that would amount to taking away a person's property. In effect, the decision meant that the Constitution protected slavery. Reaction to the decision. Rather than settling the issue, the decision divided the country even more. The court upheld what many in the South had always maintained. Nothing could legally stop the spread of slavery. The Republicans' main issue, limiting the spread of slavery, was ruled unconstitutional. Republicans and other anti-slavery groups were outraged. They called the Dred Scott decision, quote, a wicked and false judgment, close quote, and the greatest crime, close quote, ever committed in the nation's courts. Reading check. Applying. Based on the Dred Scott decision, could voters ban slavery? Explain. Page 460. Lincoln and Douglas. Main idea. The Lincoln-Douglas debates placed the little-known Lincoln into the national spotlight. History and you. Do you like to root for the underdog? Read how Abraham Lincoln scarcely debated against the powerful Stephen Douglas. In the congressional election of 1858, the Senate race in Illinois was the center of national attention. The contest pitted the current senator, Democrat Stephen A. Douglas, against Republican challenger Abraham Lincoln. Some considered Douglas a likely candidate for president in 1860. Lincoln was nearly an unknown. Douglas, a successful lawyer, joined the Democratic Party and won election to the House in 1842 and to the Senate in 1846. Short, stocky, and powerful, Douglas was called the Little Giant. He disliked slavery but thought that the controversy over it would interfere with the nation's growth. He believed the issue could be solved through popular sovereignty. Born in the poor backcountry of Kentucky, Abraham Lincoln moved to Indiana as a child and later to Illinois. Like Douglas, Lincoln was intelligent, ambitious, and a successful lawyer. He had little formal education but excellent political skills. He had served in the Illinois legislature and in the U.S. House of Representatives. Lincoln saw slavery as morally wrong, but admitted there was no easy way to end slavery where it existed. He was certain, though, that slavery should not be allowed to spread. The Lincoln-Douglas debates. Not as well known as Douglas, Lincoln challenged the senator to a series of debates. Douglas reluctantly agreed. The two met 7 times in August, September, and October of 1858 in cities and villages throughout Illinois. Thousands came to these debates. The main topic or subject of the discussion was slavery. During the debate at Freeport, Lincoln pressed Douglas about his views on popular sovereignty. Could the people of a territory legally exclude slavery before becoming a state? Douglas replied that the people could exclude slavery by refusing to pass laws protecting slaveholders' rights. Douglas's response, which satisfied anti-slavery followers but lost him support in the South, became known as the Freeport Doctrine. Douglas claimed that Lincoln wanted African Americans to be fully equal to whites. Lincoln denied this. Still, Lincoln said, quote, in the right to eat the bread which his own hand earns, an African American is my equal and the equal of Senator Douglas and the equal of every living man, close quote. The real issue, Lincoln said, is, quote, between the men who think slavery a wrong and those who do not think it wrong. The Republican Party think it wrong, close quote. Following the debates, Douglas won a narrow victory in the election. Lincoln lost the election but did not come away empty-handed. He gained a national reputation as a man of clear thinking who could argue with force and persuasion. The raid on Harper's Ferry. After the 1858 election, Southerners felt threatened by Republicans. In late 1859, an act of violence added to their fears. On October 16th, the abolitionist John Brown led a group on a raid on Harper's Ferry, Virginia. His target was an arsenal or a storage site for weapons. Brown hoped to arm enslaved African Americans and start a revolt against slaveholders. Abolitionists had paid for the raid. Brown's raid was defeated by local citizens and federal troops. Convicted of treason and murder, Brown was sentenced to hang. His execution shook the North. Some anti-slavery Northerners denounced Brown's use of violence. Others saw Brown as a martyr, a person who dies for a great cause. John Brown's death rallied abolitionists. When Southerners learned of Brown's abolitionist ties, their fears of a great Northern conspiracy against them seemed to be confirmed. The nation was on the brink of disaster. Reading check. Identifying. Why did John Brown raid the arsenal at Harper's Ferry? Section 3 review. Vocabulary. Define each of the following. Rigid, topic, arsenal, martyr. Main ideas. 2. Specifying. What issue led to the formation of the Republican Party, and what stand did the new party take on that issue? 3. Explaining. What reasons did Tawney give for Dred Scott's statement as an enslaved person? Okay, that wraps up Chapter 15, Section 3. Coakley out.